The airport terminal fell silent. Zainab Adeyemi's passport trembled in her fingers as the man in the black coat stepped directly into her path. 6 bodyguards materialized behind him like shadows given form. Her 5-year-old son pressed against her legs, hiding. The man's eyes, cold, calculating, devastatingly calm, dropped to the child. Then lifted to her. "You're not leaving with my child." His voice barely rose above a whisper. Zainab's blood turned to ice. She had never seen this man before in her life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what you think is really happening here. Then let's continue. The fluorescent lights of Incheon International Airport hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of artificial brightness that made reality feel slightly unreal. Zainab had been counting down the minutes. 4 to 7 minutes until boarding. 4 to 7 minutes until she and Elijah would be safely in the air, flying toward Lagos, toward her mother's arms, toward the life she should have chosen 5 years ago. Her bakery was already sold. Her apartment emptied. Her soul chapter closed. She had told herself it was the right decision. Seoul had given her everything. A career. Independence. The chance to raise her son in a city that never stopped moving. But Seoul had also begun to feel like a cage. For months, she had noticed things. Small things. A car parked too long outside her bakery. A man reading the same newspaper 3 days in a row at the cafe across the street. Phone calls that connected to silence before disconnecting. Paranoia, she had told herself. Exhaustion. The loneliness of raising a child alone in a foreign country. But 3 weeks ago, the feeling had sharpened into certainty. Someone was watching her. And more terrifyingly, someone was watching Elijah. So she had made the only decision a mother could make. She ran. Now, standing in the international departures terminal with her son's small hand wrapped around 2 of her fingers, she allowed herself to breathe. Almost free. Almost safe. Almost. "Mommy." Elijah's voice was small. Uncertain. She looked down at him. His eyes, those impossibly dark eyes that had always seemed too old for his face, were fixed on something behind her. "Mommy, why are those men looking at us?" Zainab turned, and her world stopped. He stood 20 feet away. Tall. Still. Wrapped in a black wool coat that probably cost more than her entire bakery had been worth. His face was carved from stone. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, eyes so dark they seemed to absorb the light around them. He wasn't moving. He wasn't speaking. He was simply watching. The men behind him, 6 of them, all in identical black suits, held the same unnatural stillness. Like predators waiting for permission to strike. Travelers flowed around them like water around rocks, instinctively giving them space, sensing danger without understanding it. Zainab's hand tightened around Elijah's. "Move," she told herself. "Walk past them. They're not here for you. They can't be here for you." She took a step forward. The man in the black coat took a step forward. She stopped. He stopped. Zainab's throat constricted. This isn't happening. She angled her body, preparing to walk around him, to find security, to disappear into the crowd. But he was already moving. Not rushing. Not threatening. Just closing the distance with the inevitability of a tide. His bodyguards spread out behind him, not surrounding her, but blocking any path to the gates. Zainab pulled Elijah behind her, shielding him with her body. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steadier than her heartbeat. "You're in my way." The man stopped 3 feet from her. His eyes dropped to the child hiding behind her legs. Something flickered across his face. So fast she almost missed it. Pain. Recognition. Possession. Then it was gone, replaced by that terrible stillness. When he spoke, his voice was low. Controlled. Barely above a whisper. "You're not leaving with my child." The words hit her like physical blows. Zainab stared at him. "I'm sorry." "The boy." His eyes hadn't left Elijah. "His not yours." A laugh escaped her. Sharp, incredulous, edged with hysteria. "I don't know who you are, but you've clearly made a mistake. This is my son." Elijah Adeyemi. He was born at Seoul National University Hospital 5 years ago. I have his birth certificate in my bag. I have his. I know where he was born. The man's voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen. It simply existed, as immovable as granite. I know the date, the time, the weight, the name of the doctor who delivered him. I know things about that child that you don't, Ms. Adeyemi. Ice spread through her veins. He knows my name. I also know, he continued, that if you board that flight, you will be making the biggest mistake of your life. Elijah whimpered behind her. Mommy, I'm scared. Zainab's fear transformed into something harder, sharper. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. I don't know who you are, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. I don't know what you want, but if you don't step away from me and my son in the next 5 seconds, I will scream so loud that every security officer in this airport will descend on you like the wrath of God. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something darker. Scream, he said. See what happens. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because she had just noticed what he was doing with his left hand. A subtle gesture, barely perceptible, directed at one of the bodyguards behind him. The bodyguard touched his ear, murmured something in Korean too fast for her to catch. And suddenly, the security officers she had been counting on began walking away. Not running, not panicking, just leaving, as if they had received orders, as if the entire airport had been transformed into this man's private kingdom. Zainab's blood ran cold. Who are you? She breathed. He reached into his coat pocket. She flinched backward, pulling Elijah with her. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a photograph and held it up for her to see. The image was grainy, clearly taken from security footage, enlarged and enhanced. It showed a woman in a hospital gown, lying in a bed, her face turned toward the window. The woman was not Zainab, but the baby in her arms, tiny, wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair. That baby, she would have recognized anywhere. That was taken at Seoul National University Hospital, the man said. The maternity ward. 5 years and 4 months ago. Zainab's mind rejected what she was seeing. That's not possible. The woman in this photograph gave birth to a son at 3:47 a.m. The attending physician was Dr. Park Sung-minit. The birth weight was 3.2 kilograms. Every detail matched. Every single detail. But the woman in the photograph was not her. I was there, Zainab heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant. Wrong. I gave birth to him. I remember the pain. I remember holding him for the first time. I remember. You remember what they wanted you to remember. The man's voice was not cruel. It was something worse. It was certain. There is no gentle way to say this, Ms. Adeyemi. The child you have raised for 5 years, the child you love, is not biologically yours. He was placed with you as part of an elaborate deception orchestrated by people who did not want him found. No. The word ripped from her throat. No. You're lying. You're insane. I don't know what kind of sick game this is, but his blood type is AB negative. Zainab stopped. The rarest blood type in the world. Fewer than 1% of the global population carries it. The man's dark eyes finally lifted from Elijah to meet hers. What is your blood type, Ms. Adeyemi? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew. O positive. The most common blood type on Earth. It had never made sense. The doctors had called it an anomaly, a mutation, a 1 in a million genetic quirk. She had believed them. She had needed to believe them. The child's blood type, the man said quietly, matches mine. The airport seemed to tilt around her. I have spent 4 years searching for him. 4 years following dead ends and false leads and deliberate misdirection. 4 years watching the people I trusted most lie to my face about what happened to my family's bloodline. He took a step closer. Zainab couldn't move. His name is not Elijah. It was never Elijah. And while I have no desire to traumatize him by ripping him from the only mother he has ever known. His voice hardened, just slightly, a crack in the ice revealing the fire beneath. I will not allow you to disappear with him. Not again. Not ever again. Zainab stared at the stranger before her. The impossible stranger who was claiming her son belonged to him. Behind her, Elijah tugged at her dress. Mommy. His voice trembled. Mommy, why does that man keep looking at me like that? She didn't have an answer. She didn't have anything. Only the terrible, growing suspicion that the life she had built, the son she had raised, the identity she had claimed, might not be hers at all. The man's name was Kang Tae-hyun. She would learn this later, in the back of a black sedan with tinted windows, her son asleep against her shoulder. The city lights of Seoul bleeding past like memories she couldn't quite hold. But in the airport, she knew only what her instincts told her. This man was dangerous. This man was powerful. And this man was not going to let her leave. I have a boarding pass, she said, hating how her voice cracked. I have legal custody documents. I have every right to take my son anywhere I want. Your documents, Kang Tae-hyun said, are forgeries. That's masterful forgeries. I'll grant you that. Whoever created your paper trail knew exactly what they were doing. Hospital records, birth certificates, immunization files, passport applications. Every piece of documentation perfectly in order, perfectly consistent, perfectly false. He pulled something else from his pocket. A manila folder, thin but heavy with implications. This is the real birth record. The one that was sealed by court order 5 years ago and hidden in a private archive that supposedly no longer exists. He didn't offer it to her. He simply held it, watching her face, reading her reactions with the patience of someone who had learned to extract truth from silence. The child in your arms was born to a surrogate. A woman named Kim Soo-yeon, who died under suspicious circumstances 3 months after giving birth. The genetic material used to create him came from 2 sources, one of which was a woman who was supposed to become my wife. Zainab's knees buckled. She caught herself against a pillar, clutching Elijah tighter. The other source, Kang Tae-hyun continued, his voice never rising, was me. Silence. Complete, devastating silence. Travelers continued flowing past them. Announcements echoed overhead. Somewhere, a child laughed. But Zainab heard none of it. She heard only the impossible words still ringing in her ears. You're telling me, she said slowly, that someone stole your genetic material, created a child, and then somehow placed that child with me. Yes. Why? The question hung in the air. For the first time, something shifted in Kang Tae-hyun's expression. Not softness. Not vulnerability. Something darker. Something that looked almost like grief. Because the people who did this wanted to destroy me. And they knew that the cruelest way to do that was not to kill my child, but to ensure I would spend the rest of my life knowing he existed somewhere in the world, beyond my reach, raised by strangers, carrying my blood and my name and never knowing either. His jaw tightened. They wanted me to suffer. So they made my son a ghost. And they made you his unwitting guardian. Zainab shook her head. This is insane. This is, I would have known. Someone would have told me. The adoption agency. What adoption agency, Ms. Adeyemi? The question hit her like ice water. Think carefully. You've told this story many times, haven't you? The struggling young woman who desperately wanted a child. The chance encounter with a sympathetic nurse who mentioned a special program. The discreet facility outside the city. The abbreviated paperwork. The healthy baby boy placed in your arms with no questions asked. Every word was a knife. Every word was true. Did you ever meet the birth mother? Did you ever see official court documentation? Did you ever wonder why the process was so easy? Zainab's silence was its own answer. You weren't adopting a child, Ms. Adeyemi. You were accepting a deposit. A hiding place. A location where my enemies could ensure my son would be invisible, unreachable, lost to me forever. Tears burned behind her eyes. She refused to let them fall. Why should I believe any of this? You could be lying. You could be some kind of predator who targets single mothers. You could be. I could arrange a DNA test within the hour. His voice was flat. I could have court orders issued by morning. I could have immigration officials detain you at the gate. I could have police escort you from this airport in handcuffs while your son screams for a mother who will be taken to a holding cell and questioned about her involvement in an international trafficking conspiracy. Each sentence landed like a blow. I could do all of these things, Ms. Adeyemi, and I would win, not because I am good, or righteous, or just, but because I have spent 20 years building an empire that makes governments nervous, and there is no legal system in this country that will rule against me when the evidence is as clear as this. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive and utterly overwhelming. But I am not going to do those things. Because contrary to what you may be thinking right now, I am not interested in destroying you. I am interested in the truth. And the truth is that we have both been manipulated by the same enemy. His eyes searched her face. You did not steal my child. You did not know he was mine. You raised him with love and care and attention. And for that, I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid with money or power or threats. Something cracked in his voice. So small she almost missed it. But he is still my son. And I am still his father. And I will not leave this airport without him. Elijah stirred against Zainab's chest. His small hand reached up, rubbing his eyes. Mommy, why are we still standing here? Is the plane broken? Zainab looked down at her son. Her son. The boy she had fed at 3 a.m. when he wouldn't stop crying. The boy she had taught to read using the labels on ingredients in her bakery. The boy who called her mommy with such absolute trust that it broke her heart every single time. She had built her entire world around this child. And now a stranger was telling her that world was built on lies. Baby, she whispered. We need to stay here for a little while longer, okay? Mommy has to talk to someone. Elijah's eyes drifted to Kang Taehyun. And something strange happened. Instead of hiding, instead of crying, instead of reaching for Zainab's protection, he stared directly at the man who claimed to be his father, with an expression that was far too knowing for a 5-year-old. You look sad, Elijah said. The words hung in the air. Kang Taehyun's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shattered. Do I? His voice was hoarse. Yeah. Elijah tilted his head, studying him with that unsettling intensity that Zainab had never been able to explain. You look like how I feel when I have bad dreams about the lady with the cold hands. Zainab's blood froze. What lady, baby? But Elijah had already lost interest, burying his face against her shoulder. She looked up at Kang Taehyun. His face had gone pale. What did he say? I don't know what he... The lady with the cold hands. His voice was barely controlled. Did he describe her before? Did he? He has nightmares sometimes. They don't mean anything. He's just a child with an active imagination. But Kang Taehyun was already pulling out his phone, rapidly typing something in Korean. His bodyguard stepped closer, murmuring in his ear. The conversation was too fast for Zainab to follow, but she caught fragments. The surrogate, Kim Soo-yeon, the facility, and one phrase, repeated with growing urgency. She might still be alive. Kang Taehyun's eyes snapped back to Zainab. The ice in his expression had transformed into something more frightening. Determination. Ms. Adeyemi, I need you to come with me. I'm not going anywhere with you. The people who placed my son with you, the people who created the paperwork that made you believe he was legally yours, they are not finished. They have been watching you for months. They knew you were planning to flee. And they are not going to let you disappear with the one piece of leverage they have against me. What are you talking about? You were never the destination, Ms. Adeyemi. You were the bait. The word landed like a stone in still water. They wanted you to run. They wanted you to bring my son to an international airport, surrounded by chaos and cameras and thousands of witnesses. Because they knew that the moment I appeared to stop you, the moment I revealed myself publicly. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. And for the first time, Zainab saw something other than control in his face. Fear. We need to leave. Now. I told you, I'm not. Ms. Adeyemi. He grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firmly enough that she couldn't pull away. In approximately 4 minutes, men are going to enter this terminal through the service corridors. They are not here to protect you. They are not here to protect my son. They are here to ensure that both of you disappear before I can learn the truth about what happened 5 years ago. His grip tightened. You can hate me. You can fight me. You can spend the rest of your life trying to destroy me. But right now, in this moment, I am the only thing standing between your son and the people who turned him into a weapon. Elijah whimpered. Mommy, I want to go home. Zainab looked at her son. At the stranger claiming to be his father. At the airport that suddenly felt less like an escape route and more like a trap. And she made the only decision she could. Fine, she said. But if you're lying to me, if any of this is a trick. If I'm lying, Kang Taehyun said, already pulling her toward a side exit, you'll have plenty of time to kill me yourself. It was not a reassurance. It was a promise. The car was waiting exactly where Kang Taehyun said it would be. Black. Armored. Windows tinted so dark they looked like sheets of obsidian. Zainab hesitated at the door. Get in, Kang Taehyun said, his eyes scanning the terminal behind them. Quickly. She hated following orders. She hated how powerless she felt. But she hated the thought of Elijah being hurt more. She climbed into the back seat, pulling her son onto her lap. Kang Taehyun slid in beside them, and the door closed with the heavy finality of a vault. The car was already moving before she could process what was happening. Silence filled the space between them. Elijah had fallen asleep almost immediately, a survival mechanism, Zainab suspected. His small body knew when it was time to retreat from things too overwhelming to understand. She studied Kang Taehyun in the dim light. He was not looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the sleeping child. And the expression on his face. It was not the cold calculation she expected. It was hunger. Not the dangerous kind. Not the predatory kind. The desperate kind. The kind that came from years of emptiness. He looks like her, Kang Taehyun said quietly. Zainab didn't respond. My fiancée. The woman who was supposed to be his mother. His voice was barely audible. She had the same shape to her mouth. The same way of tilting her head when she was concentrating on something. What happened to her? The question escaped before Zainab could stop it. Kang Taehyun's jaw tightened. She died. 2 months before the child was born. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. Everything felt inadequate. Don't be. His tone flattened. She was murdered. And I spent 3 years hunting down every person responsible. They are no longer capable of accepting apologies. Zainab suppressed a shiver. So this child. She looked down at Elijah, still sleeping peacefully against her chest. Is all you have left of her? Kang Taehyun didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. They drove for nearly an hour before the car turned off the main road and began climbing into the mountains outside Seoul. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by darkness and trees and the occasional flash of a security camera mounted on posts that looked far too sophisticated for a rural road. Finally, the car stopped. Zainab looked out the window, and her breath caught. The building before her was not a house. It was a fortress. Modern architecture softened by traditional Korean design elements. Multiple stories of steel and glass and stone, nestled into the mountainside like something that had grown there naturally. Guards patrolled the perimeter, visible enough to be deterrent, invisible enough to suggest there were far more she couldn't see. Where are we? One of my private residences. Kang Taehyun opened his door. You'll be safe here while we determine our next steps. Our next steps. The DNA test. The legal documentation. The investigation into exactly how my son ended up in your care. He paused, looking back at her. I told you, Ms. Adeyemi. I am not your enemy. I am trying to discover who our mutual enemies are. And if I refuse to participate? If I take my son then you'll be dead within 72 hours. The words were spoken without emphasis, without threat, just fact. The people hunting you have resources that exceed even my own. If you run, they will find you. If you hide, they will extract you. The only reason you've survived this long is because they needed you alive, needed my son alive, until the moment they could use him against me. He stepped out of the car. That moment has arrived, which means you are no longer useful to them. And people who are no longer useful have a tendency to disappear. He extended his hand. Not a command. An offer. Stay. Let me protect you. Let me protect my son. And let me find out the truth about what was done to both of us. Zainab looked at his hand. At the fortress behind him. At her sleeping child. She had no good options. She had only survival. She took his hand. The interior of the safe house was as impressive as the exterior. Open spaces and clean lines. Art that probably belonged in museums. Furniture that looked both brutally expensive and surprisingly comfortable. But what struck Zainab most was the silence. Not the absence of sound. Staff moved quietly through the halls, and somewhere distant, she could hear the hum of security systems. No, this was the silence of a man who had designed his entire world to require no noise. No music playing. No television murmuring. No casual conversation filling the emptiness. Just stillness. A woman appeared, middle-aged, Korean, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with the military precision of her posture. This is Mrs. Yoon, Kang Tae-hyun said. She manages the household. She'll show you to your quarters and ensure you have everything you need. Quarters. Zainab clutched Elijah tighter. How long do you expect me to stay here? As long as necessary. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. He turned to Mrs. Yoon and spoke rapidly in Korean. Too fast for Zainab to follow, though she caught fragments. The child's safety. No external communication. Medical examination tomorrow. Then he switched back to English. The DNA test will be conducted in the morning. A doctor I trust will examine the child to ensure he's healthy. You will be present for all of it. And if the DNA doesn't match? Kang Tae-hyun's expression didn't change. It will match. But if it doesn't? Then I will personally escort you to whatever destination you choose, provide you with enough money to start a new life, and spend the rest of my existence wondering how I could have been so wrong. His eyes met hers. Dark. Unwavering. Certain. But I am not wrong, Ms. Adeyemi. I have never been wrong about anything that mattered. And nothing has ever mattered more than this. He walked away without another word. Mrs. Yoon touched Zainab's arm gently. Please, follow me. The young master must be exhausted. The young master. The words sent ice through her veins. But she followed anyway. Because what choice did she have? The quarters Mrs. Yoon led her to a larger than her entire apartment had been. A sitting room. A bedroom. An attached nursery already stocked with toys and clothes and books, all clearly purchased within the last few hours, tags still dangling from some items. He prepared all this? Zainab asked, her voice hollow. In the time since the airport. Mrs. Yoon's expression was carefully neutral. The chairman has been preparing for this moment for years, Miss Adeyemi. The specific arrangements were finalized once your flight plan became known. But the infrastructure has been waiting. Zainab laid Elijah on the bed. Enormous, cloud-soft, covered in white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He stirred but didn't wake. How did he find us? She asked. How did he know I was trying to leave? Mrs. Yoon hesitated. I'm not certain I should. Tell me. Something in Zainab's voice made the older woman pause. Then, slowly, she reached into her pocket and withdrew a photograph. Grainy. Surveillance quality. It showed Zainab standing in a travel agency, pointing at flight schedules on a poster. The chairman has maintained observation on certain situations for several years. When your name appeared in connection with one of those situations, he began monitoring your movements. He's been spying on me. He's been searching, miss. For 4 years, he has searched. Every lead that emerged, every possibility, every whisper about a child matching the genetic profile, he investigated personally. Most were false alarms. Deliberate misdirections planted by his enemies to waste his time and resources. Mrs. Yoon's voice softened. But 3 months ago, an anonymous tip arrived. A photograph of a boy in a bakery window. A bakery owned by a Nigerian woman in Seoul. She glanced at the sleeping child. The chairman saw that photograph and knew immediately. Even before the genetic testing. Even before the investigation. He knew. Knew what? That his son had been found. Zainab sank onto the edge of the bed. Her entire world, every assumption, every belief, every certainty, was crumbling around her. The people who gave him to me, she whispered. The nurse. The agency. Were any of them real? We're still investigating. But the preliminary findings suggest, no. The entire operation was constructed specifically to place the child with you. A single mother. Isolated. Financially vulnerable. Someone who would ask few questions and be grateful for the opportunity. They used me. Yes. And the woman in the photograph? Kim Soo-yeon? The surrogate. Mrs. Yoon's expression flickered. She died under circumstances that are still being investigated. Officially, it was suicide. Unofficially. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The chairman will explain more tomorrow, Mrs. Yoon said, moving toward the door. For now, please rest. The child needs stability, and you need strength. Whatever answers you're seeking, they will not come tonight. She paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, Miss Adeyemi, I have served the Kang family for 32 years. I have watched the chairman grow from a boy into the man he is today. I have seen what the loss of his fiancée did to him. What the loss of his child did to him. Her voice trembled, just slightly. Tonight, for the first time in 5 years, he sat in his study and wept. Not from grief. From relief. She bowed her head. Whatever you believe about him, whatever you fear, please understand that you have returned something to him that cannot be measured or explained. And there is nothing in this world he will not do to protect it. The door closed behind her. Zainab sat in the silence, looking at her son, wondering if he had ever truly been hers. Elijah woke screaming at 2:47 a.m. Zainab was at his side before the sound finished echoing, pulling him into her arms, whispering the soothing words that had calmed him through 1,000 nightmares. Shh, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy's got you. But tonight, the words didn't work. He thrashed against her, his small hands pushing at her chest, his eyes wide and unfocused. The cold lady, he sobbed. The cold lady wants to take me back. She says I don't belong to you. She says. Elijah, look at me. Look at me. His eyes finally focused on her face. There is no cold lady, Zainab said firmly. It was just a dream. You're safe. You're with mommy. But even as she said it, she felt the doubt creeping in. How much does he remember? How much does he know? The door opened. Kang Tae-hyun stood in the frame. He was dressed differently now, dark pants, a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No jacket. No armor of wealth and power. Just a man who had clearly not been sleeping. The tattoos on his forearms were visible for the first time. Complex patterns in black ink, crawling up from his wrists toward his elbows. Korean characters woven through the design. Zainab recognized some of them. Family. Loyalty. Blood. He didn't enter the room. He simply stood there, his eyes fixed on the crying child. The cold lady, he said quietly. Does he dream of her often? It's none of your. Does he dream of her often? Each word was a stone dropped into still water. Zainab hesitated. Sometimes. A few times a month. He says she has cold hands and black eyes and she tells him he doesn't belong where he is. Kang Tae-hyun's expression didn't change. But his hands, she noticed his hands. They were clenched into fists at his sides. The tattoos on his knuckles stretched tight over white bone. Kim Soo-yeon, he said. The surrogate. She had a condition, a circulatory disorder that made her extremities perpetually cold. And her eyes. He stopped. Her eyes were damaged in an accident when she was young. They appeared almost entirely black because of scarring to the corneas. Zainab's blood went cold. That's not possible. He's never seen photographs of her. He's never. I know. Kang Tae-hyun's voice was barely audible. That's what terrifies me. He finally stepped into the room. Slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. He stopped at the edge of the bed, looking down at Elijah. The boy had stopped crying. He was staring up at the stranger with those impossibly dark eyes. Are you the sad man from the airport? Elijah asked. Yes. You still look sad. I know. Why? Kang Tae-hyun was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered himself to one knee, bringing himself to the child's eye level. Because I lost something very important, he said. A long time ago. And I've been trying to find it ever since. Did you find it? A pause. Something shifted in Kang Tae-hyun's face. Something that looked almost like hope. I think I might have, he whispered. Tonight. Elijah studied him for another moment. Then, without warning, he reached out and touched Kang Tae-hyun's face. His small fingers traced the line of the man's jaw. You look like the pictures in my dreams, Elijah said. The good dreams. Not the cold lady dreams. The ones where someone is looking for me and can't find me. Zainab's heart stopped. Kang Tae-hyun's breath caught. In those dreams, Elijah continued, the person looking for me is always crying. But they don't give up. They just keep looking and looking and looking. His small hand dropped. I think, he said solemnly, you're the person who was looking for me. Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. When Kang Tae-hyun finally spoke, his voice was wrecked. Yes, he said. I was. Are you going to stop being sad now? A tear slipped down Kang Tae-hyun's cheek. He made no move to wipe it away. I don't know, he said honestly. But I'm going to try. Elijah nodded, apparently satisfied. Then he reached up, this child who had hidden behind Zainab in terror just hours ago, and wrapped his small arms around Kang Tae-hyun's neck. The embrace was brief. A child's impulse, nothing more. But when Elijah pulled away, something fundamental had changed. The air in the room felt different. Heavier. More real. Kang Tae-hyun rose to his feet. His eyes met Zainab's. For the first time, she saw no coldness in them. Only pain. Only longing. Only the terrible weight of what had been stolen from both of them. We should let him sleep, Kang Tae-hyun said quietly. Zainab nodded. He walked to the door. Paused. Tomorrow, he said without turning around, I would like to tell you everything. The full truth about what happened. About my family. About the enemies who did this to us. You deserve to understand. And if I don't want to know? He finally looked back at her. Then I will respect that. But I think you need to know. Because this story is not finished, Ms. Adeyemi. And whether you like it or not, you are now a part of it. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Zainab lay back on the bed, pulling Elijah close. He was already asleep again. Peaceful. Untroubled. As if the conversation had never happened. She stared at the ceiling. Thinking about cold hands and black eyes. Thinking about a man who had spent 4 years searching for a ghost. Thinking about the impossible truth that was becoming harder to deny with every passing hour. Her son was not her son. And the man who had found him would never let him go. Morning came slowly. Zainab had not slept. She had spent the hours before dawn memorizing every inch of her son's face. The curve of his cheek, the shape of his nose, the way his eyelashes fanned against his skin when he slept. Looking for traces of herself. Finding none. How did I miss this? How did I not see? The answer was simple and devastating. She had never looked. She had been so desperate for a child, so grateful for the unexpected gift, that she had accepted the miracle without questioning it. A knock at the door. "Come in." Mrs. Yoon entered, carrying a tray of food. "The chairman has requested that you join him for breakfast," she said. "When you're ready. No rush." "And Elijah?" "The young master can eat in the nursery. Our staff is trained in childcare. He will be safe and entertained while you speak with the chairman." Zainab hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to keep Elijah close. But she also knew that she needed answers. And she couldn't get them with a 5-year-old listening. "Fine," she said. "Give me 30 minutes. The room Kang Tae-hyun had chosen for their meeting was surprisingly intimate. Not the grand dining hall she had expected, but a smaller space with windows overlooking a traditional Korean garden. Stone paths, carefully sculpted trees, a koi pond glittering in the morning light. Beauty designed to soothe. It only made her more suspicious. Kang Tae-hyun rose when she entered. He was dressed formally again. Charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. The tattoo on his neck was visible above his collar. A coiled dragon, she realized now. Its scales seemed to shift with every movement. "Please," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. A servant appeared, pouring tea, arranging dishes, then disappearing without a sound. "You said you would tell me everything," Zainab said. "Start." Kang Tae-hyun nodded slowly. "To understand what happened to my son, to our son, you need to understand my family. And my family is not something I discuss with outsiders. I'm not an outsider anymore, am I?" A ghost of something flickered across his face. "No," he admitted. "You're not." He set down his teacup. "My family has controlled certain interests in Korea for 4 generations. Legitimate businesses on the surface. Import-export. Technology. Real estate. But beneath that surface. You're Mafia." The word hung in the air. Kang Tae-hyun didn't flinch. "In the West, you call it Mafia. In Korea, we have other names. But yes, my family sits at the center of a network that influences economies, governments, and industries across Asia. We are not merely wealthy, Ms. Adeyemi. We are infrastructure. And you're the head of this infrastructure." "The chairman." "Yes. I inherited the position 6 years ago, when my father died." His jaw tightened. "He was murdered. We never discovered by whom." "You think it's connected to what happened to your son?" "I know it is. The same month my father died, my fiancé was taken from our home in the middle of the night. I received demands, surrender control of certain operations, or she would be killed." His voice remained steady. His eyes betrayed him. "I refused. I was young, arrogant. I believed I could find her before they carried out their threats. I believed that showing weakness would only embolden my enemies and ensure more people I loved would suffer." He looked toward the window. "I was wrong. She died. She was killed. There's a difference." His hands curled around the edge of the table. "They sent her body back to me in pieces." Zainab's stomach turned. "But what I didn't know, what they never told me, was that she had been pregnant. Early stages. Perhaps she hadn't even known herself. The autopsy revealed it." He closed his eyes. "My child. Dead before I even knew they existed. Murdered along with the woman I loved. But Elijah is not that child. That pregnancy ended in violence. But what I discovered years later, what my enemies apparently discovered as well, is that before she was taken, my fiancé had preserved genetic material. Eggs. Stored at a private fertility clinic as a precaution because she had a family history of reproductive complications." Understanding began to dawn. "They took her eggs." "Yes. And they took samples from me as well. Hair, blood. It wouldn't have been difficult. I was surrounded by people I trusted. People who betrayed me." His eyes opened. "They created a child. My biological child. using her genetic material and mine. A surrogate carried the pregnancy. And when the baby was born, they made him disappear. But why? What was the point? Leverage. The word was bitter. As long as they controlled my heir, my bloodline, they had power over me. They could threaten to harm him. They could threaten to reveal his existence and create chaos within my organization. Or they could simply hold him in reserve, a weapon to be deployed whenever I became too dangerous. He leaned forward. They underestimated me. I spent 4 years hunting them, dismantling their networks, killing everyone who knew about the child's existence. I tore apart every organization connected to his creation, searching for any trace of where they had hidden him. And you found nothing. I found everything. Names, locations, bank records, a complete reconstruction of how the operation was funded and executed. But the one thing I could never find was the child himself. He had been erased, given new documentation, new identity, placed somewhere no one would ever think to look. His eyes met hers. Until 3 months ago, when an anonymous source sent me a photograph of a 5-year-old boy with my fiancé's eyes, standing in a bakery window in Hongdae. Zainab's hands trembled. The photograph was meant to draw me out. I know that now. Whoever sent it wanted me to reveal myself, to prove that the child mattered to me. They probably planned to use the exposure against me. Then why? Because I don't care. His voice hardened. I don't care about exposure. I don't care about political consequences. I don't care about anything except ensuring that my son is safe. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. I watched you for weeks, Ms. Adeyemi. Before the airport. Before any of this. I sent people to observe you, your routines, your relationships, how you treated the boy. His reflection in the glass was haunted. You love him. Genuinely. Completely. The way a mother should love a child. And he loves you the same way. Then why are you trying to take him from me? He turned. I'm not. Silence. I told you, I could have taken him by force. I could have arranged for you to be arrested, deported, eliminated. I have the resources to simply remove you from my son's life without explanation. He stepped closer. I chose not to. Because whatever legal fiction gave him to you, whatever conspiracy made you his mother, the truth is that you are his mother. You raised him. You sacrificed for him. You built your entire existence around protecting him. His voice softened. I will not destroy that, even if I have the right to. Then what do you want? He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. I want to be part of his life. I want to protect him from the enemies who are still hunting us both. I want to know my son, not to replace you, but to be there, to matter. His jaw tightened. I have been alone for 6 years. My family is gone. My fiancé is gone. Everyone I trusted betrayed me. And then, 3 months ago, I discovered that against all probability, against all logic, a piece of what I lost still exists. A child with my blood. My legacy. My hope. He extended his hand. I am not asking you to give him up, Ms. Adeyemi. I am asking you to let me earn a place beside you. To be his father, while you remain his mother. Zainab stared at his hand. At the tattoos inscribed across his fingers. At the truth waiting in his eyes. She thought of Elijah. Of the nightmares that plagued him. Of the way he had reached for this stranger in the darkness. I think you're the person who was looking for me. Her son had recognized something she couldn't see. Her son had reached for the father he had never known. She took Kang Taehyun's hand. One chance, she said. That's all you get. One chance to prove that you are who you say you are. One chance to show me that my son will be safe with you. His fingers tightened around hers. Not possessive. Grateful. One chance, he agreed. That's all I need. The doctor arrived at noon. Zainab watched every step of the process. The gentle swab of Elijah's cheek, the careful labeling, the professional efficiency of a man who clearly did this for people who paid very well for discretion. The results came back within 2 hours. Kang Tae-hyun handed her the report without comment. She read it 3 times. The numbers were undeniable. 99.9998% probability of paternal match. Elijah was his son. And she was not, had never been, his biological mother. The paper slipped from her fingers. She walked to the window and stood there, staring at nothing. Behind her, she heard Elijah laughing. He had spent the morning playing with the household staff, charming everyone he met with the easy warmth that had always seemed so impossible to explain. Now she understood. It wasn't her warmth he had inherited. It was theirs. The warmth of a woman she had never met. A woman murdered before she ever had the chance to hold her son. Ms. Adeyemi. Kang Tae-hyun's voice was quiet. The results don't change what I said this morning. You are still his mother in every way that matters. Biology is not destiny. You believe that? I have to. He moved to stand beside her. Because if biology were destiny, I would be my father. And my father was a monster who built this empire on corpses. She looked at him. His profile was sharp against the window light. Beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait. My security team is tracking the source of the anonymous photograph. When we identify who sent it, who has been manipulating both of us, we will eliminate the threat. Eliminate. I told you what I am, Ms. Adeyemi. I will not pretend otherwise. And Elijah? What happens to him while you're eliminating things? He stays here, protected, safe, with you. Kang Tae-hyun turned to face her fully. I want you to remain in this house for the duration. Not as a prisoner, you can leave whenever you choose, but as a guest under my protection. For how long? Until I've destroyed everyone who threatens my son. However long that takes. She thought about her bakery, her apartment, the life she had built in Seoul. All of it gone now. Sold off in preparation for an escape that never happened. I don't have anywhere else to go, she admitted quietly. Then stay. The word was simple. The weight behind it was not. Stay, he repeated. Let me learn to be a father. Let Elijah decide for himself what he wants our family to look like. And let me prove that you made the right choice when you took my hand. She met his eyes. Dark. Certain. Desperate. What if I never trust you? Then at least you'll be alive not to trust me. That matters more to me than your faith. Something cracked in her chest. Not breaking. Shifting. Fine, she said. I'll stay. For now. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. It transformed him. Made him human. Made him dangerous in an entirely different way. For now, he agreed. That's all I ask. 3 weeks passed. Zainab fell into a routine she never expected to find comfortable. Mornings were spent with Elijah, exploring the grounds, playing in the gardens, watching him discover the wonders of a world he had never known existed. Afternoons were spent baking. The kitchen staff had been initially bewildered by her requests. Commercial flour, industrial mixes, access to specialty ingredients she sourced from suppliers across Seoul. But Kang Tae-hyun had given orders that she was to be accommodated in everything, and so they accommodated. She filled the massive kitchen with the smells of home. Nigerian chin-chin. Korean hotteok filled with brown sugar and cinnamon. Fusion pastries that combined the flavors of both her worlds. Elijah loved watching her work. He would sit on a stool at the counter, chattering about his day, asking endless questions about ingredients and techniques. Just like before, she told herself. Nothing has changed. But everything had changed. Because now, every afternoon, another presence appeared in the kitchen doorway. Kang Tae-hyun. He never announced himself. He simply materialized, silent as smoke, and stood there watching her. Sometimes for minutes. Sometimes for hours. Always at a distance. Always silent. At first, she had found it unnerving. Then she had found it annoying. Now Now she found herself listening for the soft whisper of his footsteps on the kitchen tile. "You can come closer, you know," she said one afternoon, not looking up from the dough she was kneading. "I don't bite." A pause. Then he moved. She felt him stop beside her, close enough that she could sense his warmth but not close enough to touch. "May I ask what you're making?" Puff puff. "Nigerian fried dough. Elijah loves it." Silence. She continued working. When she finally glanced at him, his eyes were fixed on her hands, watching the way she shaped the dough with practiced efficiency. "You move like an artist," he said quietly. She snorted. "I move like someone who's made 1,000 batches and can't afford to waste ingredients." "That's the same thing." She didn't know how to respond to that. So she didn't. "The bakery you owned," he said after a moment. "What was it called?" "Sweet Refuge." "Did you choose the name?" "My mother did. She said every kitchen should be a place where people find comfort from the world." "Is that what baking is for you? Refuge?" She stopped kneading. "Yes," she admitted. "The one thing that's always made sense to me. No matter what else was happening in my life, the loneliness, the struggle, the fear, I could always retreat to a kitchen and make something beautiful." She looked at him. "Is that strange?" "No." His voice was soft. "I understand perfectly." He didn't elaborate, but she saw something flicker in his eyes, a recognition that went deeper than politeness. "What's your refuge?" she asked. "The thing that makes sense when nothing else does." He was quiet for a long moment. "There used to be a person," he said finally. "Now there is only duty." "That sounds lonely." "It is." The admission hung in the air. Raw. Honest. Completely unexpected from a man who had built his entire existence on emotional control. "Would you like to try some?" she asked, gesturing to the batter. "When it's finished." His eyes met hers. "I would like that very much." It was the longest conversation they'd had since the truth came out. It was nowhere near enough. But it was a beginning. That night, Elijah asked a question that changed everything. "Mommy, is the sad man my daddy?" Zainab froze, her hand suspended above the book she'd been reading to him. "What makes you ask that, baby?" "You look at each other funny. And he watches me all the time. And," Elijah hesitated, "and he feels like family, even though I never met him before." How do you explain genetic recognition to a 5-year-old? How do you explain any of this? "The man's name is Kang Taehyun," she said carefully. "And he's someone who cares about you very much. He's been looking for you for a long time." "Is he my daddy?" The word hung in the air. Zainab had spent 5 years being both parents to this child. The thought of sharing him, of losing him. "It's complicated," she said. "But yes, in a way, he is." Elijah nodded solemnly. "Then, does that mean I have 2 families now?" "Yes, baby. I suppose it does." He thought about this for a moment. "That's a lot of people to love me," he said finally. "I like that." She pulled him close, burying her face in his hair. Out of the mouths of babes. The following week brought an unexpected guest. His name was Park Jin-woo. Late 30s. Tall. Handsome in a gentle, approachable way that stood in stark contrast to Kang Taehyun's predatory beauty. He arrived with a briefcase full of documents and a smile that seemed genuine, which immediately made Zainab suspicious. "Ms. Adeyemi." He bowed slightly. "I'm one of the chairman's legal advisors. I've been working on the documentation related to your son's situation." "What documentation?" "The falsified records. The conspiracy to hide his identity. We've been building a case for years, but recent developments have accelerated our timeline." He set the briefcase on the table. "I need to go over some details with you. About the woman who first approached you about the adoption." Zainab felt her defenses rise. "I already told your employer everything I remember." "I understand. But there are gaps in the timeline that we're trying to fill. Small details that might seem insignificant but could help us identify the remaining conspirators." She studied him. He seemed earnest, professional, kind, all of which meant nothing in this world she had stumbled into. "Fine," she said. "Ask your questions." For the next 2 hours, Park Jin-woo guided her through every memory she had of the adoption process. The sympathetic nurse at the hospital, the too convenient paperwork, the isolated facility where she had first held Elijah. He was patient, thorough, never pushing when she hesitated. And when they were finished, he did something unexpected. He apologized. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I am sorry this was done to you. You were as much a victim as the chairman. Perhaps more so, because you had no idea you were being used." "Are you supposed to say things like that? Doesn't it undermine your employer's authority or something?" A small smile. "The chairman values honesty above almost everything else. And the truth is, what was done to you was monstrous. The people who orchestrated it deserve everything that's coming to them." He stood. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Adeyemi. If you remember anything else, anything at all, please contact me directly." He handed her a card. She took it. "Mr. Park." "Yes." Is Kang Tae-hyun always like this?" The silence. The watching. The intensity. She nodded. Park Jin-woo's expression softened. He wasn't always. Before everything happened, before he lost the woman he loved, he was different. Not warm, exactly, but warmer. He used to smile, used to laugh, used to let people get close. He paused at the door. "The man you've met is what grief turned him into. But beneath the ice, there's still fire. He just doesn't let anyone see it anymore." He left. Zainab stared at the business card in her hand, thinking about fire beneath ice, thinking about warmth that had been frozen by loss, thinking about what it might take to thaw it. Later that evening, Zainab found herself wandering the house. Elijah was asleep. The staff had disappeared into their routines. And the silence, the omnipresent silence that seemed to cling to everything Kang Tae-hyun touched, had become suffocating. She needed to move. She needed to think. Her wandering brought her to a wing of the house she hadn't explored before. Private. Unmarked. The doors were heavier here, the security more visible. She should have turned back. She didn't. At the end of the corridor, a door stood slightly ajar. Light spilled through the gap. She approached. And stopped. The room beyond was a study, elegant, masculine, lined with books and dominated by a massive desk. Kang Tae-hyun sat behind it. But he wasn't working. He was holding a photograph, staring at it with an expression that made Zainab's chest constrict. Pain, longing, love that had nowhere to go. She should have left. She should have granted him his privacy. Instead, she knocked. His head snapped up. For a fraction of a second, she saw him unguarded, broken and beautiful and utterly alone. Then the mask slammed back into place. "Ms. Adeyemi." His voice was flat. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." She pushed the door open wider. "Can I come in anyway?" A long pause. Then he nodded. She entered, moved to the desk, looked at the photograph he was still holding. A woman. Young. Radiant. Eyes that sparkled with intelligence and mischief. Elijah's eyes. "She was beautiful," Zainab said quietly. "Yes." He set the photograph down. Carefully. Reverently. "She was everything I didn't deserve." What was her name? Yoon Harin. The syllables were soft. Sacred. "We were going to be married in the spring. She wanted cherry blossoms at the ceremony." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Your sympathy changes nothing. It might change you." He looked at her. Really looked at her. And for a moment, she saw behind the ice. Saw the man he might have been. The man Park Jin-woo remembered. "Why are you here, Ms. Adeyemi?" "Zainab." "What?" "My name is Zainab. You've been calling me Ms. Adeyemi for 3 weeks. If I'm going to be living in your house, raising your son, existing in your world, you should probably use my name." Silence. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, Zainab. Her name in his voice was different. Heavier. More real. I'm here, she said, because I was lonely. And I thought you might be too. His jaw tightened. I don't need. I know you don't need anything. You've made that extremely clear. But wanting something, that's different, isn't it? She moved around the desk. Stopped beside his chair. Close enough to touch, though she didn't. You've spent 6 years alone. You've turned yourself into ice because it was the only way to survive. But you found your son. Against all odds, you found him. And he's here, healthy and safe and learning to love you. Doesn't that mean anything? It means everything. Then let yourself feel it. Just for a moment. Let yourself be human. His eyes closed. She saw his hands tremble. Saw the mask crack, just slightly. And then he stood. Abruptly. Violently. Putting distance between them. You should go, he said, his voice rough. This was inappropriate. Taehyun. Go. The command cracked like a whip. She went. But as she reached the door, she paused. For what it's worth, she said without turning around. I think she would have wanted you to live. Whoever she was. Whatever you had together. She would have wanted you to find something worth living for. Not just people worth dying for. She left. Behind her, in the silence of his study, Kang Taehyun stared at the photograph of the woman he had lost. And for the first time in 6 years, he allowed himself to consider the possibility that survival might not be enough. Days turned into weeks. Something shifted between them. Kang Taehyun began appearing in the kitchen more frequently, not just to watch, but to participate. He would stand beside Zainab, following her instructions, measuring ingredients with the same precision he applied to everything else. He was a terrible baker. Everything he touched either burned or collapsed. But he kept trying. And she kept letting him. You're overworking the dough, she said one afternoon, watching him murder what was supposed to be croissant pastry. I'm applying consistent pressure. You're strangling it. Pastry needs to be coaxed, not controlled. He stopped. Looked at her. Something complicated moved behind his eyes. I'm not good at coaxing, he admitted. Control is all I know. Then learn something new. She moved beside him, took his hands in hers, guided them through the proper motion, gentle, rhythmic, patient. His breath caught. She pretended not to notice. There, she said, stepping back. Feel the difference. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was rough. Yes, I feel it. She wasn't sure they were talking about dough anymore. The attack came 3 weeks later. Zainab was in the garden with Elijah, watching him chase butterflies, when the alarms began to wail. Security personnel materialized from nowhere. Surrounding them, weapons drawn, forming a protective barrier. What's happening? She demanded. Perimeter breach. The head of security, a grim-faced man named Sergeant Kwon, was already pulling her toward the house. We need to get you inside. Now. Where's Taehyun? The name came out before she could stop it. If Kwon noticed the familiarity, he didn't react. The chairman is handling the situation. Your job is to keep the young master safe. They were hustled into a panic room deep within the house. Reinforced walls, multiple exits, enough supplies to survive for weeks. Elijah was trembling. Mommy, what's happening? Why are there loud noises? She pulled him close, rocking him gently. It's just a drill, baby. The people here are practicing how to keep us safe. Everything is fine. She had never lied to him before. It burned. Hours passed. The alarms continued. Then stopped. Silence. And then, the door opened. Kang Taehyun stood in the threshold. He was disheveled. Blood on his shirt. Not his, she realized, because he was moving too smoothly for someone who was injured. His eyes found her immediately. Fear. Relief. Something deeper. It's over, he said. You're safe. What happened? He stepped into the room. Knelt beside her. His hand reached out, hesitated, then settled on her shoulder. Someone attempted to breach the compound. They were looking for the child. Who? We captured one alive. His being questioned. She understood what that meant. She found she didn't care. And the others? Eliminated. His voice was flat, professional, the voice of a man who had done this countless times. But his hand on her shoulder was trembling. I was terrified, he admitted quietly. When the alarms went off. When I didn't know if you were safe. I was terrified. We're fine. Elijah is fine. I know. But for those moments when I didn't know. He swallowed hard. I discovered that your safety matters to me as much as his. Perhaps more. She stared at him. Taehyun. Don't say anything. Please. I know this is inappropriate. I know you have no reason to trust me. No reason to feel anything other than resentment for what I've done to your life. But I needed you to know. Just in case something happens. I needed you to understand. He rose. Turned to leave. Taehyun. He stopped. Stay. The word echoed in the bunker. He turned back. She was standing now, Elijah still clinging to her hand. Whatever you have to do, whatever comes next, you can do it later. Right now, Elijah needs stability. And so do I. She met his eyes. So stay. Slowly, he walked back to them. Settled onto the floor beside her. Elijah, exhausted from fear and adrenaline, crawled into his lap without hesitation. The child's trust was immediate. Absolute. Blood recognizes blood, Zainab thought. She leaned her head against Kang Taehyun's shoulder. He went utterly still. Then, gradually, his arm came around her, holding them both, protecting them both. And in the darkness of the panic room, surrounded by silence and fear and the aftermath of violence, something began to bloom. The interrogation revealed everything. The assassins had been sent by a coalition of Kang Taehyun's enemies, men and women who had lost power, influence, and family members to his rise over the past decade. They had been the ones who orchestrated the original conspiracy, who stole his fiancée, who created his son in secret, who placed the child with Zainab as a final act of cruelty. And now, realizing that their weapon had been discovered, they had decided to eliminate the evidence entirely. They were going to kill him, Kang Taehyun said, his voice hollow. My son. The child they created. They were going to murder him rather than let me have him. Zainab sat across from him in his study. The door closed against the rest of the world. What happens now? I end them. All of them. Every person who participated in this conspiracy. Every person who funded it. Every person who looked the other way. His eyes were ice. By the time I'm finished, they will be a memory. A cautionary tale whispered in the halls of power. And us? Elijah and me. You stay here, protected, for as long as necessary. That's not what I'm asking. He looked at her. What are you asking, Zainab? I'm asking what happens to us. You and me. This thing that's been building between us. Silence. Heavy. Charged. You don't want me, he said finally. You want security. You want protection for your son. You're grateful that I didn't destroy your life when I could have, and you're confusing gratitude with. Don't tell me what I feel. She stood, moved toward him, stopped just inches away. I'm not a child. I'm not naive. I know exactly what you are and what you've done. And none of that changes what I feel when I look at you. His breath caught. Zainab. You've been watching me for weeks. Appearing in my kitchen. Learning my rhythms. Letting yourself care about someone for the first time in years. She reached up. Touched his face. He closed his eyes. You feel it too, she whispered. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. His voice was wrecked. But feeling something doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it wise. Since when do you care about wisdom? You built an empire on instinct and will. You survived things that would have destroyed anyone else. And you're telling me you're afraid of this? His eyes opened. Dark. Burning. Yes, he admitted. Because everything I've ever loved has been taken from me. And I cannot, will not, survive losing you too. The confession hung in the air. Raw. Devastating. Real. Then protect us, she said simply. Destroy your enemies. Make us safe. And then let yourself have what you want. What if what I want is more than you're willing to give? Then we'll figure it out together. She leaned up, pressed her lips to his cheek. Just once. Soft. A promise. Then she stepped back. You have a war to win, she said. Win it. And come back to us. She left. Behind her, Kang Taehyun pressed his hand to the place where her lips had touched his skin. And made a vow. The next 3 months were brutal. Kang Taehyun dismantled the coalition piece by piece. Bank accounts frozen. Operations exposed. Key players quietly removed from positions of power, some through legal means, others through methods that would never be spoken of in polite company. Zainab watched it happen from a distance. She saw the toll it took on him, the late nights, the early mornings, the shadows under his eyes that grew deeper with each passing week. But she also saw the determination, the fire that burned beneath the ice. He came home to them every night, no matter how late, no matter how exhausted. He came home. He would stand in Elijah's doorway, watching the boys sleep. Then he would find Zainab in the kitchen, always the kitchen, because she baked when she was anxious, and stand there in silence. She never pushed. She simply acknowledged his presence, poured him tea, continued working, and gradually, he began to talk. Not about the war, not about the violence, about himself, about the boy he had been before the burden of his family descended on him, about the dreams he had abandoned when his father died, about the woman he had loved and the life they had planned to build. She listened. She didn't judge. And slowly, imperceptibly, the ice began to melt. The complication arrived in the form of Park Jin-woo. The legal advisor had become a frequent visitor, always with legitimate reasons, documents to review, statements to sign, updates on the ongoing investigations. But Zainab noticed how his eyes lingered on her, how his visits often extended beyond what was necessary, how he found excuses to be near her, to make her laugh, to remind her that kindness existed in forms other than Kang Taehyun's fierce protection. She was not interested, but she was also lonely, and Jin-woo was gentle in a way that felt safe. One evening, she made the mistake of laughing too loudly at something he said. Kang Taehyun walked in on the sound. He stopped in the doorway. His eyes moved from Zainab's flushed face to Jin-woo's easy smile. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Mr. Park. His voice was silk over steel. I wasn't aware you had business here today. Just following up on some documentation, Chairman. Ms. Adeyemi has been incredibly helpful. I'm sure she has. The words were neutral. The subtext was not. Jin-woo, to his credit, recognized the danger immediately. I should be going. Thank you for your time, Ms. Adeyemi. Chairman. He left quickly, wisely. Zainab crossed her arms. That was rude. Was it? You know it was. Kang Taehyun moved into the room. Slowly, deliberately. Tell me, Zainab, do you find Mr. Park's company pleasant? He's polite, attentive, easy to talk to. I see. Is there a problem with that? He stopped in front of her. Close. Too close. The problem, he said quietly, is that I have spent 3 months fighting a war for your safety and my son's life. I have spent 3 months restraining myself from touching you, from claiming you, from making it abundantly clear to every man in my organization that you are mine. His jaw tightened, and I returned to find my own employee making you laugh in my own house. Jealousy doesn't suit you. Apparently it does, because I am drowning in it. Zainab's breath caught. Taehyun. I know I have no right. I know you owe me nothing. But every time another man looks at you, every time someone makes you smile in a way I cannot. He stopped, closed his eyes. I am trying to be better than I was, trying to deserve you. But I am still the man I've always been, and that man does not share. She reached up, took his face in her hands. Look at me. His eyes opened. Jinwoo is kind. But he is not you. No one is you. And I don't want anyone else. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you would die for Elijah without hesitation. I know you've shown me more honesty in 3 months than most people show in a lifetime. I know the ice is armor, not identity. She stepped closer. And I know that when you came through that bunker door covered in blood, my first thought wasn't fear. It was relief. Because you were safe. His breath shuddered. I am not a good man. I never asked for a good man. I asked for a real one. Zainab. Stop fighting this. Stop protecting yourself from something that could heal you. He caught her hands, brought them to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. If I let you in, he whispered against her skin, I will not be able to let you go. Ever. Do you understand what that means? Yes. And you still? Yes. He pulled her close. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just holding. His arms around her. His face buried in her hair. His entire body trembling with the force of emotions he had denied for 6 years. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to be gentle. How to be soft. You don't have to be soft. You just have to be present. I can do that. Then that's enough. They stood there in the kitchen, wrapped around each other, while the sun set beyond the windows. And something that had been frozen for 6 years finally began to thaw. The first kiss came a week later. Not in a moment of drama or crisis. In a moment of perfect ordinariness. Zainab was reading to Elijah before bed. Kang Taehyun was sitting in the corner of the room, a tablet in his hands, pretending to work while actually watching them. It had become his habit. Being present. Elijah fell asleep halfway through the story. Zainab closed the book, adjusted his blankets, pressed a kiss to his forehead. Then she turned, and found Kang Taehyun watching her with an expression that made her forget how to breathe. She moved to him. He rose to meet her. They stood there, inches apart, the silence between them charged with weeks of restraint. Zainab, he said. Just her name. Nothing else. She closed the distance, pressed her lips to his. Soft, gentle. The kiss of a question asked and answered simultaneously. He made a sound, something between a groan and a prayer, and his hands came up to cup her face. Not rough, reverent, as if she were something sacred, something he had never expected to find. The kiss deepened, not urgently, inevitably, like gravity. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. I have waited my entire life for you, he breathed. I didn't know it, but I have. Taehyun. Let me finish. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I cannot promise to be easy. I cannot promise to be normal. But I can promise that for the rest of my life, whatever that looks like, you and Elijah will come first. Before the empire. Before my revenge. Before everything. I believe you. Even though I'm a monster. You're not a monster. You're a man who was broken and rebuilt himself. There's a difference. He kissed her again. Slower this time. More certain. A seal on a promise neither of them had spoken aloud but both understood. When they separated, he took her hand. Come with me. Way. Somewhere we can actually talk. Without worrying about waking the child. She smiled. And followed. He led her to his private quarters. Rooms she had never entered. The space was Spartan, elegant, but personal. Books in multiple languages. A few photographs. The scent of his cologne lingering in the air. He closed the door behind them. I want to be clear, he said, his back still to her. I didn't bring you here to. I know. He turned. She was smiling. You're too honorable to presume anything. It's one of the things I love about you. The word hung in the air. Love. His expression shifted. You love me. I'm falling in love with you. There's a difference. but the destination is the same. He crossed to her. Slowly. Deliberately. As if approaching something he was afraid might disappear. Say it again. I'm falling in love with you. His hands found her waist. Pulled her close. I have been in love with you, he said quietly. Since the night you came to my study and told me that the woman I lost would have wanted me to live. Taehyun. You gave me permission to hope. To feel. To want. I didn't think I was still capable of those things. But you made me capable again. He kissed her. Deep. Thorough. A kiss that promised everything without demanding anything. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight. Not for. Just. Stay. Let me hold you. Let me wake up with you beside me. Yes. They moved to the bed. Lay down together. His arms around her. Her head on his chest. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, two people who had been alone for far too long found something they had stopped believing existed. Peace. The night passed in whispers and warmth. What happened between them stayed between them. Some things are too sacred for words. Morning came with fire. Kang Taehyun's phone began ringing at 5:47 a.m. You're not leaving with my child, Korean Mafia boss said. Then she froze. Morning came with fire. Kang Taehyun's phone began ringing at 5:47 a.m. Zainab felt him tense beside her. The immediate transition from sleep to alertness that spoke of a lifetime of danger. What is it? She murmured. He was already moving, the phone pressed to his ear. His responses clipped and rapid in Korean. She caught fragments. The compound, confirmed identities, they're mobilizing. When he ended the call, his expression had transformed. The warmth of the night before was gone. In its place was the chairman. Cold. Calculating. Lethal. What's happening? The final piece. He was already pulling on clothes. Dark, practical. Nothing like the expensive suits she was accustomed to seeing. We've located the leadership of the coalition. All of them. Together. You're going after them. Yes. She sat up, the sheets pooling around her waist. Now? After everything, you're just leaving. He stopped. Turned to face her. Zainab. His voice was gentle, even as his eyes remained hard. This ends today. One way or another. I will not spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when they'll try again. Wondering if today is the day they succeed in taking my son. He crossed to the bed. Knelt beside it. Took her hands. I need you to trust me. I need you to stay here with Elijah, surrounded by security, until I come back. And if you don't come back? The question hung between them. His jaw tightened. If I don't come back, you and Elijah will be provided for. Financially. Legally. My entire organization has orders to protect you as if you were my wife. I don't want your money. I want you. I know. He pressed his lips to her knuckles. That's why I'm coming back. He rose. Moved toward the door. Taehyun. He stopped. Come home to us. He looked back at her. And for one moment, just one, the ice cracked completely. Always, he said. Then he was gone. The hours that followed were the longest of Zainab's life. She went through the motions of normalcy, breakfast with Elijah, games in the nursery, a baking session that produced croissants she couldn't bring herself to eat. But her mind was elsewhere. With a man who had walked into war for her. For them. Elijah sensed her distraction. Mommy. Where did the sad man go? He had to take care of something important. Baby. He'll be back soon. Promise. She hesitated. I hope so. Elijah studied her with those two old eyes. He's fighting the bad people. Isn't he? The ones who made the loud noises. How do you explain violence to a child? How do you justify the world you've brought him into? Yes, she said finally. He's making sure the bad people can't hurt us anymore. Elijah nodded solemnly. Good. I don't want anyone to hurt you, Mommy. Or him. You care about him. "He's my daddy." Elijah said it simply. "Certainly. I'm supposed to care about him." Tears burned behind Zainab's eyes. She pulled her son close. "He cares about you too, baby. More than you know." The operation was surgical. Kang Tae-hyun had spent 3 months planning this moment, studying his enemies' movements, identifying their weaknesses, positioning his forces for maximum efficiency. The compound where the coalition leadership had gathered was a fortress. Private island. International waters. Technically beyond the reach of any single government. But Kang Tae-hyun was not a government. He was something far more dangerous. He was a man with nothing left to lose except the people he loved. And he was not going to lose them. The assault began at midnight. 3 teams. Simultaneous entry points. Communication jamming that cut the compound off from the outside world. Kang Tae-hyun led the primary team himself. It was not necessary. His men were capable. His generals were experienced. But this was personal. These were the people who had murdered his fiancée, who had created his son in a laboratory like an experiment, who had placed that son in the care of a stranger and watched from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to use him as leverage. He would not delegate their deaths to subordinates. The fighting was brief. His enemies had grown complacent over the years, confident that their resources and their isolation would protect them. They were wrong. By dawn, the compound was secured. The coalition leadership, 7 men and women who had orchestrated years of suffering, were gathered in the main hall. Kang Tae-hyun stood before them, silent, still, the blood of their guards drying on his coat. "You know why I'm here," he said finally. No one answered. 3 years ago, you took the woman I loved. You killed her slowly. You sent her body back to me in pieces, thinking it would break me." His voice was calm, almost conversational. Somehow, that made it worse. "It did break me. For a time. But broken things can be rebuilt. And I rebuilt myself into something that would find you. All of you. Eventually." He began to pace. "Then I discovered what you had done with her genetic material. With mine. You created a child, my child, and you hid him from me. You turned my own bloodline into a weapon to be used against me." He stopped in front of the eldest member of the coalition. A woman in her 70s. Silver hair. Cold eyes. "You were the architect, weren't you? The mastermind. The others followed your lead." The woman's chin lifted. "You think killing me changes anything? Others will rise. The Kang dynasty will fall eventually. It always does." "Perhaps." Kang Tae-hyun tilted his head. "But not today. And not by your hand." He turned to his men. "Take them to the boats. They'll be delivered to the appropriate authorities with evidence of their crimes against legitimate governments. Let the legal systems of the world handle their punishment." The woman's eyes widened. "You're not going to kill us?" "No." Kang Tae-hyun's expression didn't change. "Death would be mercy. I want you to spend the rest of your lives in cells, watching everything you built crumble, knowing that my son, the weapon you created, is being raised by people who love him." He leaned close. "I want you to live with your failure." He straightened. "Take them." He arrived home at sunset. Exhausted, bloodstained, carrying the weight of violence that would never fully wash away. But home. He found Zainab in the kitchen. Of course. She was kneading dough with a ferocity that suggested the flour had personally wronged her. "It's done," he said from the doorway. She froze, turned. Her eyes swept over him, cataloging injuries, assessing damage, searching for signs that he was truly standing before her and not some desperate hallucination. "You're hurt. Minor wounds. Already treated. You're alive. I promised I would be." She crossed the kitchen in 3 steps. Her hands, still dusted with flour, cupped his face. "Don't you ever do that to me again. Don't you ever walk into danger without." He kissed her, cutting off the lecture, swallowing her fear, pouring 6 years of loneliness and 3 months of warfare into a single, desperate contact. When they broke apart, both were trembling. "It's over," He breathed against her lips. The coalition is finished. Their networks are collapsing. The people who knew about Elijah's origins are either dead or imprisoned. We're safe. You're sure? As sure as I can be. There will always be threats. That's the nature of my world. But the specific danger that brought you into my life, that's ended. She closed her eyes, pressed her forehead to his. What happens now? Now. He pulled back slightly, met her gaze. Now I ask you a question I should have asked weeks ago. What question? Will you stay? Not as a guest under my protection. Not as the woman raising my son. But as something else entirely. Her breath caught. What are you asking, Taehyun? I'm asking if you could consider building a life with me. A real life. Marriage. Family. A future that isn't defined by fear or obligation. You're proposing. I'm asking permission to propose. Eventually. When you're ready. When you trust that I'm asking because I love you, not because of what you represent to my son. Tears slipped down her cheeks. You love me. I thought that was obvious. Say it. Please. I need to hear you say it. He took a breath. The ice around his heart, ice that had protected him for so long, shattered completely. I love you, Zainab Adeyemi. I love your strength and your gentleness and the way you make my house smell like home. I love how you challenge me and comfort me and refuse to let me retreat into silence when silence would be easier. His voice cracked. I love that you see the man beneath the monster. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to become the man you see. She kissed him. Not gentle this time. Fierce. Acclaiming. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears and joy. Yes, she said. Yes. Yes, I'll stay. Yes, you can propose eventually. Yes to all of it. He wrapped his arms around her, held her close, and for the first time in 6 years, allowed himself to believe in a future. The months that followed were an education in hope. Kang Taehyun learned how to be a father. Not through instinct, his own father had been a cautionary tale, not a model. But through attention. Through presence. Through the daily accumulation of small moments that built something larger than any single gesture could create. He learned Elijah's favorite foods. His bedtime routines. The particular way his son laughed when something truly delighted him. He learned how to comfort nightmares without minimizing fears. How to discipline without crushing spirit. How to love without overwhelming. Zainab watched it happen. Watched the ice melt completely as Kang Taehyun transformed from the silent chairman into something simpler and more profound. A man who came home. He's different with you, Mrs. Yoon observed one afternoon. With both of you. The staff has noticed. Different how? He breathes. I've worked for this family for 32 years, and I've never seen the chairman breathe before. It was always vigilance, caution, anticipation of the next threat. The older woman smiled. Now he looks at you and the young master, and I can see him actually living. Not surviving. Living. His healing. Yes, you healed him. Zainab shook her head. He healed himself. I just gave him permission. Park Jin-woo became a distant but necessary presence. The legal work continued, establishing Elijah's true identity, navigating the complex international waters of custody and inheritance. But the easy warmth between him and Zainab had cooled to professional courtesy. Kang Taehyun never mentioned the incident again. He didn't need to. His presence at every meeting, his hand casually resting on Zainab's shoulder, his quiet certainty, all of it communicated volumes without words. Jin-woo, to his credit, never overstepped again. But once, near the end of a long session reviewing documents, he caught Zainab's eye when Taehyun had stepped out to take a call. You made the right choice, he said quietly. For what it's worth. Excuse me. The chairman. You chose him. I wanted to tell you. I understand. And I think you made the right choice. Zainab studied him. Were you really interested? Or was it something else? Jin-woo smiled ruefully. I was hopeful. You were warm in a house full of ice. Kind in a world full of knives. It would have been impossible not to notice. I'm sorry if I... You have nothing to apologize for. You never encouraged me. I simply saw what I wanted to see. He gathered his papers. The chairman is fortunate. I hope he knows that. He does. Good. Then my conscience is clear. He left just as Kang Tae-hyun returned. The chairman's eyes tracked Jinwoo's departure, then settled on Zainab. A question in his gaze. He was saying goodbye, she said. Properly, this time. Tae-hyun nodded slowly. Should I be concerned? No. She crossed to him, took his hand. You never needed to be concerned. But I appreciate that you asked instead of assumed. Progress. Considerable progress. He lifted their joined hands, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I'm learning, he murmured. Slowly, but I'm learning. It happened 3 months later. No grand gestures. No public spectacles. Just a quiet evening in the garden, Elijah asleep upstairs, the moon casting silver light across the koi pond. They had been walking in comfortable silence when Kang Tae-hyun stopped. I have something for you. He reached into his pocket, withdrew a small box. Zainab's heart stuttered. Tae-hyun. Before you say anything. He held up a hand. I need you to understand what this means. Not just the obvious, the wedding, the title, the public acknowledgement, but what it means for us. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Not a diamond, something more unexpected. A deep blue sapphire, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the moonlight like captured stars. This belonged to my grandmother, he said. She was the only person in my family who ever showed me genuine kindness. She told me, before she died, that I should give this ring to someone who made me want to be better than I was. His voice roughened. I've been carrying it for 15 years. Waiting. And then you appeared in an airport terminal, shielding my son with your body, looking at me like I was the devil himself. You were terrifying. I know. But you didn't run. You didn't beg. You looked at me, and you challenged me. In that moment, I knew. Knew what? That you were the one I'd been waiting for. Even though I didn't deserve you. Even though everything between us started in fear and manipulation. You were mine. He went to one knee. Zainab Adeyemi. I cannot promise you a normal life. I cannot promise safety or simplicity or freedom from the shadows of my world. But I can promise that every day, for the rest of my existence, I will choose you. I will protect you. I will love you with everything I am and everything I'm still learning to become. His eyes held hers. Dark. Certain. Vulnerable. Will you marry me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. Rose. Pulled her into his arms. I love you, he whispered against her hair. More than I knew I was capable of loving anyone. I love you too. Even when you're terrifying. Especially when you're terrifying. He laughed. An actual laugh. Warm and surprised and utterly genuine. I think that's the first time you've ever made me laugh. I plan to do it more often. I look forward to it. They stood in the garden, wrapped around each other. The future stretching out before them like an unwritten story. And somewhere in the house above them, a 5-year-old boy dreamed of families that chose each other. Of fathers who searched across continents. Of mothers who protected against impossible odds. Of love that conquered every obstacle placed in its path. The ceremony took place 6 months later. Small. Private. Deliberately unremarkable by the standards of the Kang dynasty. But perfect. Zainab had insisted on incorporating elements of both their cultures. Korean traditions interwoven with Nigerian ones, creating something entirely new. She wore white lace with traditional Nigerian jeel head wrap. He wore a hanbok in midnight blue, the Kang family crest embroidered in silver thread. Elijah, dressed in a miniature version of his father's attire, served as ring bearer. The guest list was limited to people they actually cared about. Mrs. Yoon cried through the entire ceremony. Sergeant Kwon, standing guard with the security team, was spotted discreetly wiping his eyes. Even Park Jin-woo attended, maintaining professional distance while offering genuine congratulations. The vows were traditional. But the kiss was something else entirely. Kang Tae-hyun cupped Zainab's face in his hands and looked at her with an expression that made every person present feel like they were intruding on something sacred. "I will love you," he said quietly, "just for her. Until I stop breathing. And probably after that." That's not in the traditional vows. I'm improvising. Then he kissed her, and the small gathering erupted in applause. Marriage changed everything. And nothing. Zainab became the chairman's wife, with all the privileges and complications that entailed. She gained access to resources beyond her imagination. She gained enemies who saw her as a weakness to exploit. She gained a position of influence within one of Asia's most powerful criminal organizations. But what she treasured most was something simpler. She gained a partner. Someone who appeared in the kitchen every evening, no matter how demanding his day had been. Someone who learned her rhythms and anticipated her needs. Someone who looked at her across crowded rooms like she was the only person who mattered. Kang Tae-hyun, in turn, gained something he had stopped believing existed. Home. Not a building. Not a compound. A feeling. A woman who challenged him and comforted him in equal measure. A son who looked at him with increasing trust. A future worth fighting for. Elijah thrived. The nightmares faded as months passed. The cold lady appeared less and less frequently, eventually disappearing entirely. In her place came dreams of a different nature. Dreams of a family that made sense. Of belonging without question. Of safety without condition. He began calling Kang Tae-hyun Appa 6 months after the wedding. The first time it happened, the chairman froze mid-sentence. His eyes went wide. His carefully constructed composure cracked entirely. "What did you call me?" Elijah looked up from his coloring book, confused by the intensity of the reaction. "Appa. That's what Korean kids call their daddies, right? Mrs. Yoon taught me." Kang Tae-hyun dropped to his knees, pulled his son into a fierce embrace. "Yes," he said, his voice wrecked. "That's exactly right." Zainab watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. This man, this terrifying, powerful, damaged man, had been brought to his knees by a single word from a 5-year-old. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. All of her choices had led to this. To them. To home. But happy endings required constant vigilance. The world Kang Tae-hyun inhabited did not forgive weakness. His marriage was seen by some as evidence of softening, proof that the silent chairman had developed vulnerabilities that could be exploited. They were wrong. His love for Zainab and Elijah did not make him weaker. It made him terrifying. Because now he had something to protect. And there was nothing he would not do, no line he would not cross, to keep them safe. When whispers of a new threat emerged 18 months after the wedding, he handled it with characteristic efficiency. No public battles. No dramatic confrontations. Simply a series of quiet disappearances among those who had expressed interest in targeting his family. The message was received. The Kang family was not to be touched. On Elijah's 7th birthday, Zainab and Tae-hyun sat him down for a conversation they had been dreading. "There are things about your family," Zainab began carefully, "that are complicated. Things we've been waiting until you were older to explain." Elijah looked between them with those two old eyes. "You mean about the lady who had me in her tummy? And how mommy isn't my birth mom?" Both adults froze. "How do you know about that?" Kang Tae-hyun asked quietly. "I heard Mrs. Yoon talking to one of the guards last year. She didn't know I was there." Elijah shrugged. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." "And you're not upset?" "Why would I be upset?" Elijah's brow furrowed. "Mommy is my mommy. She raised me and loves me and bakes me birthday cakes. The lady who had me in her tummy, she gave me to mommy so mommy could be my mommy. That's not sad. That's just how our family works." Zainab's tears fell freely. "When did you get so wise, baby?" "I'm not a baby anymore, Mom. I'm 7. You're right. I'm sorry. She pulled him close. You're absolutely right. Kang Taehyun watched his wife and son embrace. Something settled in his chest. A peace he had never expected to find. There's something else, he said. About my work. About why we live in a house with so many guards. Elijah looked at him. I know you're important, Appa. And I know some people don't like you. But I also know you'd never let anything bad happen to us. How do you know that? Because you looked for me for 4 years when you didn't even know me. You'd do anything for people you love. Kang Taehyun pulled his son into his arms. You're right, he said hoarsely. I would do anything. Anything. The conversation they had dreaded became something else entirely. A confirmation of bonds that had already formed. A family acknowledging what they already knew. 10 years passed. Zainab's bakery, rebuilt, expanded, now a small empire of its own, became famous throughout Seoul for fusion pastries that blended Nigerian and Korean flavors in unexpected ways. She trained young bakers, mentored single mothers, created a foundation that helped women escape the kind of vulnerable circumstances that had once made her a target. She refused to forget where she came from, even as she embraced where she had arrived. Kang Taehyun slowly transitioned his organization away from its darker aspects. It took years. Decades of criminal infrastructure could not be dismantled overnight. But piece by piece, he transformed the Kang Empire into something his grandmother might have recognized. Legitimate businesses, legal investments, influence wielded through boardrooms rather than back alleys. He never became soft. That was not in his nature. But he became better. A father who showed up. A husband who prioritized. A leader who understood that true power came from building, not destroying. Elijah grew into a young man who carried the best of both his parents. His father's intensity. His mother's warmth. His birth mother's eyes. His adoptive mother's heart. He knew his history, all of it, including the darkest parts, and he had made peace with it. The circumstances of his creation had been horrific, but the life that followed had been filled with love. That was enough. That was everything. On the 20th anniversary of the airport confrontation, the family gathered in the garden where Taehyun had proposed. Elijah, 25 now, engaged to a woman he had met during his university years, stood with his arm around his fiancée. Zainab leaned against Taehyun, her hair now threaded with silver, her eyes still bright with the intelligence and warmth that had captivated him from the beginning. Do you remember what you said to me? She asked. That day at the airport. I remember everything about that day. You said I wasn't leaving with your child. She smiled. You were so certain. So absolute. I thought you were insane. I probably was. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But I was also right. About Elijah being yours. About everything. About you belonging in my life. About our family being worth fighting for. About all of it. She turned in his arms. Studied the face she had learned to love, older now, but no less compelling. The tattoos had faded slightly over the years, but remained visible. Permanent reminders of who he had been. Who he had become. If you could go back, she asked, would you do anything differently? He considered the question. I would have found you sooner. Saved you years of loneliness. Saved myself decades of grief. But then we wouldn't have Elijah. Not the way he is now. I know. He pulled her closer. That's why I wouldn't actually change anything. Every terrible choice. Every brutal loss. Every moment of suffering. It all led to this. He gestured at their son, their garden, their life. It all led to them. To you. And I would endure it all again, every single second, for this outcome. Zainab reached up, touched his face. I love you, Kang Taehyun. Monster and man. Ice and fire. Everything you are. I love you, Zainab Kang. The woman who saw me. The mother who saved my son. The partner who taught me how to live. They kissed. Soft. Certain. A promise renewed after 20 years. When they broke apart, Elijah was watching them with an expression of fond exasperation. You two are ridiculous. We're in love, Zainab corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Absolutely. Kang Tae-hyun smiled. An actual smile, still rare, even after all these years, but no longer impossible. She's right, he said. There is. His arm tightened around his wife. His eyes moved to his son. His heart, once frozen, once shattered, once rebuilt through sheer force of will, beat steady and strong. He had walked through fire for this family. He would do it again without hesitation. And as the sun set over Seoul, casting golden light across the garden where so much had begun, Kang Tae-hyun allowed himself to believe something he had stopped believing long ago. That some endings are not endings at all. They are beginnings. And the best stories, the ones worth telling, are the ones where love conquers everything placed in its path. The little bakery on the corner of the compound had been Zainab's idea. A small space, open to the public 3 days a week, where she could continue doing what she loved without the pressure of running an empire. She called it Sweet Refuge too. The original name. Her mother's legacy. Elijah's fiancé was learning to bake there now, practicing the recipes that would be passed down through generations. Nigerian chin-chin. Korean hotteok. Fusion pastries that told the story of two cultures becoming one family. Kang Tae-hyun still appeared in the kitchen every afternoon. He was a better baker now. Decades of practice had transformed him from hopeless to competent. But he still preferred to watch. To stand in the doorway and witness the warmth that filled the space. To remember a time when he had been ice. And to appreciate, with every breath, the fire that had thawed him. You're staring again, Zainab said without looking up from her dough. I'm admiring. Same thing. Perhaps. He moved into the room. Stopped beside her. Reached out and tucked a strand of silver-streaked hair behind her ear. I was thinking, he said. Dangerous. I was thinking about that day at the airport. When you looked at me like I was the villain of your story. You were terrifying. I know. But I was also terrified. More than I'd been in years. Because I knew, even then, that everything was about to change. She finally looked at him. Did you know it would change for the better? No. I hoped. But I didn't know. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You taught me that. How to hope again. And you taught me that love doesn't have to look like what we expect. That it can come from impossible places. That it can transform everything it touches. They stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by flour and warmth and the lingering scent of fresh pastries. Two people who had found each other through conspiracy and fear and violence. Two people who had built something beautiful from the wreckage of their separate tragedies. A family forged in fire. Sustained by love. Unbreakable. Thank you, Kang Tae-hyun said quietly. For what? For not leaving that airport. For giving me a chance when I deserved nothing. For becoming my family when you had every reason to run. Zainab smiled. The smile that had captivated him from the beginning. The smile that would captivate him until his final breath. Thank you for finding us, she replied. For fighting for us. For becoming the man our son needed you to be. I'm still learning. We all are. That's the point. She leaned up, kissed him softly, and in the quiet of their kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of 20 years of love and growth and transformation, they began working on the next batch of pastries together, side by side, as they would be for the rest of their lives. The end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment telling me your favorite moment from the journey of Zainab, Tae-hyun, and Elijah. And stay tuned for more stories of love, family, and the impossible roads we travel to find where we belong.